Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. My name's Kate and this is Dani, and we are the founders of Just Add Joy. And we are a creative agency built for the new era of influence. And we work with creators to help brands put their big ideas into the world through podcast media. And yes, that's not just RSS feeds or audio. Now, you may have seen from lots of the Cannes winners that creator marketing can be absolutely brilliant, but it can also be really shit. And this is what we call our shit creator marketing bingo card. These are some of the red flags, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We've got the no idea or creative hook that can lead to like a robotic delivery, like I'm so proud to be partnering with, #ad. You've got the awkward posing of the products, and then just the general vibe that gives you the ick of fake enthusiasm. But to understand what's going on here and why creative marketing can be so unpredictable, we're going to take you back in time briefly.
1968. Up until this point, advertising was made up of two very distinct departments. You had your account execs, who sold the work and schmoozed the clients, and then you had your creators, who came up with the ideas. These creators were true entertainers. They knew how to tell a story, they knew how to capture an audience. But whether the work worked or not was a bit of a gamble. Until this bloke came along. This guy, Stanley Pollitt, he realized that creators would have a better chance of making work that was entertaining and effective if they had a bit of guidance. So we started assigning a planner, what we now call a strategist or a planner, to creative teams. These guys would combine research with a commercial flair to give the creators a bit of a springboard and guidance for work that was entertaining and effective. Planners and creators would go down to the pub or sit in a smoke-filled office, and the planners would impart wisdom and insights about the consumer mindset, or they'd scribble down sort of thoughts on the back of a beer mat. So the idea that these sessions were really informative, they were inspiring, but they're also really concise. And this was the invention of what we call the creative brief. And it led to what many call the sort of the golden era of advertising, and advertising as we know it now. Some of you recognize this guy. This guy came because in the 1970s, one of Stanley Pollitt's planners held a briefing where he described the audience, so the audience's kids, as little monsters, and this inspired the Honey Monster, who we recognize. This guy was so successful for Sugar Puffs that they've revived it recently to boost slumping sales. And many agencies would then go on to sort of create and adopt their own version of creative briefs, adding their own flair. Any ad you think of probably has a decent brief behind it. It's informed by informed by strategic thinking and a direction for creatives. But then fast forward 50 years or so, and we've got even more things to make the advertising's golden era even better. We've got the internet, we've got iPhones, we've got the Me Too movement. But the difference is the creators aren't just sitting in creative agencies, they're also creators like the Sidemen. They're out there in the world creating content that people love. So if you're a brand now, you want these guys to be making your ads, ideally baked into the content they're already creating, because like the creators of the 1970s, they know how to capture and keep attention. But in the rush to embrace creator marketing, we seem to, as an industry, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And the creators, like the Sidemen, they don't have specialized planning departments. They have media sales houses, and they get briefs like this.
So creators normally get briefs in the form of a black and white form, and these are actually creator briefs that we've kind of collated together and obviously redacted. But there's some key patterns that are happening every single time. So you've got a list of quite transactional deliverables, and then you've got either little to no creative direction, which is basically like, you do you, hun, or you've got really heavy prescription, like the talent will say, and suggested captions, which basically mean use these words. And then you've got lots lots and lots of key messaging. On this one, we counted about 13 key messages for the creators, and our favourite line at the end, which was a note to the creators to please be single-minded in your content. So the irony of that. And then there is just this general lack of an interrogation and a communication to the creators and their managers of what success really looks like. What does it mean to be successful in this partnership between a brand and creator? So at best, you get these really vague things like this, and that won't really translate to the creator. But what you always get is reporting. Send us all your data. But then there's not a communication about how that data is going to be interpreted, what it really means for the brand. And therefore, the creators, the agents, the producers, the managers are kind of like completely bamboozled about whether the campaign was successful and how they can achieve success in the first place. So never mind that in-depth pub briefing that Dani was talking about, these creators are usually getting the briefs 10th hand about an hour before they're recording the content. And it comes across in the content. So here is just a snapshot of some of the reviews of some of the UK's most loved podcasts. And you can see they're being absolutely rinsed for the content that they are, the branded content that they are creating. And audiences are actively tuning out of their favourite shows because of the ads. And that's why we created Just Our Joy, because we want to stop this, because we truly believe that the ads can be as good as, if not better, than the rest of the content, that they could be celebrated in reviews for the types of brand collaborations that they're doing. And yeah, the audiences can actually embrace when creators are doing brand collaborations rather than necessarily like endure it. So, brief joy.
The principles of a great brief haven't changed, but they have evolved. We went to look for any sort of guides about how to create a really good creator brief. None existed. There are, however, tons and tons and tons of like guides, podcast articles on how to make a good creator brief. And some of these principles still apply. We did make one. We'll give you a link after the session. But if we were to impart some of the most important principles to advertisers in the meantime, they'd be this. Firstly, think before you brief. The creator brief is not the client brief. It should be tailored to the creator, ideally to the individual one you're working with. It should be informed by decent thinking and have a clear direction of travel. It's not a copy and paste job. It's not a form-filling exercise. It's just a strategic exercise. Secondly, boring briefs should make boring work. The brief is meant to excite creators. If you put in boring crap, you'll get out boring crap. Peter Phil did a really good bit of work recently that revealed that a dull campaign costs tens of millions of pounds more per year to match the performance of a well-thought-out and exciting campaign. That starts with a well-thought-out and exciting brief. Springboards, not scripts. Stop putting words in creators' mouths, please, like giving them a starting point or some thought starters, but telling them what to say is the briefing equivalent of putting a gun to their head. Quit the biz blab. You all know what we mean by biz blab. Those like fuzzy words like impact, innovation, leverage. Creators don't know what we mean when we say we want to empower gregarious, go-getting, Gen Z ABC ones, and they don't care either. So cut the bullshit and speak like a human. And the beer mat test. It's not the 1970s anymore, so we don't actually need to be taking creators to the pub. But the sign of a good brief is if you can fit it onto a small square or a beer mat. If it's not concise enough, then you're not ready to brief. And then finally, our most important principle, which is the two-way street. It's a brief should be a really collaborative process. It ideally should have some creator input, and if it doesn't work for the creator, they should be able to send it back and give you feedback if it doesn't work for them. Which leads us.
What better way to speak about collaboration than to welcome to the stage two of the people that are the best in the bids from both sides of the coin. Please put your hands together for Tom Fenwick-Smith from Free and Jordan Schwarzenberger, who is the actual manager of the Sidemen.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hello. Very good.
we're going to dive straight into it. So the advice that we often get in the industry is to achieve true authenticity in the campaigns. It's like to give creators total freedom and just let them create. Jordan,
Yes.
is that actually helpful, and what is helpful?
I think we were just talking about this, right? I think creators, many of them brilliant at doing what they do, very creative people, of course, and they're able to achieve success and hit an audience because they're authentic, right? That said, there needs to be some level of frameworking blended with trust, and I think all of the problems in briefing, all the problems in creative partnerships often stem from, in my experience, the brand not trusting enough. And actually, if you can trust whilst giving the right guidance and framework and say, this is what we're trying to get out of this, I think a lot of creators today are quite entrepreneurial, right? They understand brands need to hit certain things, they're trying to get something out of whatever it is that they're doing, right? So as long as you're working in that relationship style and you're being authentic, I think it works. Yeah.
Tom, from a brand point of view, what kind of conditions help you let a creator create?
I think for us, I mean, we've had a lot of experience at 3 now working with creators. Our kind of brand proposition is life needs a big network, and that's often very much about authenticity. So it really leans towards creators in general. Through our experience, simplicity has been like one of the key driving factors, and that comes from refinement and craft in the brief, and making sure that you can give a creator a very clear framework to have creativity in. I think one of our biggest projects was our Gogglebox partnership, and the idea of that was to use phonisms like tapsident or things like that when you send an accidental message. You ask creators to bring it to life in their own way, like a comedy sketch, and they bring it to life, they send it to you, we create another version of it which we post. So we've got a lovely network of content that we're putting out. And that's done really well. The first season we had about 9% engagement, and now it's up to 15% engagement in its 3rd season. So when it works really well, but you have to give them that framework and that freedom to play, as well as bearing in mind the things that a brand genuinely needs in their request.
That commercial point of view.
And so the theme of this year's MadFest is fortune favours the bold, and there's clearly the power dynamics are shifting, what we're calling the Sidemen Era. So Jordan, what do you think the consequences are for brands and advertisers if they fail to adapt and innovate and change the way they're briefing and working with creators?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this again the other day. I think if you, as a brand, aren't able to really realize that the creator holds the leverage in terms of being able to access the audiences that you want and to hit the points that you need, right? Then you're ultimately going to fall behind. And I think you're seeing now the brands that are the most forward-thinking, the brands that really dig in, they're the ones that do well, whether it's a Gymshark, a PLT, a 3, others, etc. And I think ultimately, what we're doing and our whole ethos actually has been that we find, and the Sidemen find working with brands so miserable 90% of the time that we're just forget it, we'll make our own, and then actually we don't need to work for brands. And that's literally why, partly, they've been so driven to build their own brands now. We've done so many different things because they're not really reliant on brand deals. To be honest, we don't really do many brand deals at all now. And obviously the Sidemen are the biggest in Europe, right? But even they are actually, this is a headache. And we've had, I'm not gonna name any names, but we've had campaigns before which are just pain and stress, and everyone hates it to the point where they go, what is the value in doing this? When actually we can go and build our own. So that's the consequence, is they just turn around and say, we don't need this anymore at the top level. Obviously at the bottom and those who are coming up, they still need the money, but then you're not gonna get good output. So yeah, choose your lane really.
Yeah. In our conversations, Tom, ahead of this, you mentioned something quite nice, which was a really good creative brief or really good creative work helps a brand like 3 punch above its weight in terms of media spend. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I think coming back to COVID, I know no one wants to go back to COVID, but if we go back to it, that had a really seismic change in the world of influence from my perspective. And it really brought to life micros and nanos as content creators who were real sources of influence. It was very much more peer-to-peer. And I bet if I asked anyone in the audience, what does Keir Starmer's dad do? A lot of you could tell me, right? Son of a toolmaker, right? How many of you actually care? But if you ask your mum, what does your dad do? And they tell you, you care what your grandfather did, right? And I think it's that kind of emotional connection that more micros and nanos can bring together because it's much more peer-to-peer. So the ability to buy a lot more of them and be very careful in where you buy them regionally around the country to deliver your message is really, really powerful. And people generally listen to the message that they're delivering, they take note, and also the sentiment that they send back is often drastically better than you would get with a big media spend or a massive creator that you use and kind of just flies past and is a bit of content. So I'm a big advocate for micros and nanos. We work really strongly with Dropcard, who are an incredible platform that kind of very much cast the right people to fit your brand and that campaign in real time. And I think casting within this, which also helps you punch above your weight, is key. You have to find the right creator who can deliver the message in the tone that you want really, really effectively. And that takes a partner, or you're an absolute social media nut and going through TikTok religiously, which I often am, to be able to do it.
So it's not just about the vanity metrics, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But like, elephant in the room here, like creating like an absolutely brilliant creator brief, it's going to take time. Like, do we all have time to be doing this? To you both, really?
I mean, are you throwing that to me first?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say no. Like, a lot of the people that we work with, we don't have the time. But I tell you what, it's measure twice, cut once. If it's worth making that time. If you don't, you're going to have lots of notes from your client or from your working partner. And you know, a lot of content creators, they're there building their own mini brand, in my experience. They're just trying to elevate who they are. They're not going to understand your brand colours. They're not going to understand brand guidelines and things that you would take as an assumption. And so this is why it's worth getting this brief right. Very crystal, very simple, so that there is no back and forth. Because reshooting it's a real pain in the arse for them. It's not like it is that we could go to a Soho edit suite and just move it around like with more of the above the line stuff. So yeah.
You talked about reshooting the other day, didn't you?
Yeah. I got told I was doing a campaign and someone asked me to add words into a TikTok. It's like, how you can't just add words in, and this is the type of stuff. It's like, how does that make any sense? These are like social agencies, right? So yeah, I just think, again, it's about remembering that you're going to their house as a creator. You're going to them for their output. Treat it with respect, like have a good relationship, and ultimately be humble as a brand that you're going to them for their creativity. Stop trying to dictate. It's the big thing that kills and stifles creativity. And also remember, like, a lot of these creators, they're busy, they've got families, they're trying to live life. If you're going to infringe on their time too heavily for the sake of reshooting, getting these details, you're just going to build that resentment. I think having that human mindset and treating them with that respect, I think, is super key.
And respect isn't a 20-page brief.
Absolutely not. No one's reading that, man. No one's reading that. That's the thing.
So I mean, it's very clear here that there is a treasure trove of creativity to be unlocked when you're working with creators, and creators really are the key. So I guess this is our like call to action to the industry, to not let all that like amazing strategic rigor and insight and creativity that is happening so much upstream in the commercial process to be lost downstream when you're working with creators. I'm speaking for Dani and I, but like working with creators is one of the best bits about our jobs. And when you are able to harness that collaboration via a brilliant creator brief, then it honestly takes work from good to great. And so speaking of which, we have, I think Dani mentioned it earlier, we have put together a really handy one-pager of the core principles of how to create a brilliant creator brief. So if you scan the QR code now, you can get your hands on a copy, or you can simply email us. It's hi@justourjoy.co.uk, and we'll send that over to you. But I think that is all we've got time for. So just want to say thank you so much to Tom and Jordan for joining us. Thank you for being here, and we're Just Our Joy.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, Tom. That was absolutely brilliant. Put your hands together for them.